If you're an author or plan to be one, get excited because this podcast is for you. Book Marketing Mentors is the only podcast dedicated to helping you successfully market and sell your book. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful marketing mavens, then grab a coffee or tea and listen in to your host, international best-selling author Susan Friedman.
Before I start the show and introduce you to this week's guest expert, I have a special request. In January, I'll be starting a brand new 6-week program called Marketing Mastery for Authors. Over the past few weeks, I've done some specific market research to find out exactly what you would want included in this program. On November 10th, I'm starting a beta version of the 6-week course at a fraction of the investment you'll make when it launches officially. If you want to know if it's a good fit for you, please apply sending me an email message at susan@avivapubs.com. That's Susan, S-U-S-A-N, at Aviva, A-V-I-V-A, pubs, P-U-B-S.com. You can also find the email link in the show notes on the Book Marketing Mentors website. Thank you in advance for your interest. And now, let the show begin. Welcome to Book Marketing Mentors, the weekly podcast where you learn proven strategies, tools, ideas, and tips from the masters. Every week, I introduce you to a marketing master who will share their expertise to help you market and sell more books. Today, my special guest is known as a digital strategist. Bosco Anthony is an international speaker, storyteller, and digital strategist with a background in corporate leadership and business operations. Bosco spends much time on research trends and is an idea rebel at heart. He's recognized for his executive mentorship, entrepreneurial spirit, and passion for operational maturity. Bosco thrives in a collaborative playground and is known for being an influence to the business and digital community, having spoken at TEDx Stanley Park on fueling life with purpose and alignment. All the way from Brisbane, Australia. Bosco, what an absolute pleasure it is to welcome you to the show. Thank you for being this week's guest expert and mentor.
Thank you for having me, Susan. I'm really excited to be here today. And it's the morning for me, and I'm calling in from the future. So the future's bright, and I remain optimistic.
Excellent. I love that. Yes, it's so funny. As I was telling you earlier, we were recently in Australia, and just knowing that we were living, everybody in the US's future, it was just a funny concept, but yes.
Yeah, it is a funny concept. I'm still adjusting to the time zone. I immigrated to Canada first, and now I'm in Brisbane, and I still have the Pacific Coast timelines, and it takes a while to sort of adjust between the hours and the days. And scheduling meetings are always fun because you have to sort of inform the client that you're a day ahead. So it's always interesting. But no, it's been a really good adjustment. And I'm getting used to the birds in the morning waking me up, which was something I didn't really hear much of when I was in Vancouver.
Lovely. Well, it's a beautiful country. You made a good choice. Bosco, because you spend so much time researching trends, I want to start off talking about some of the digital marketing trends that you think would be applicable to our nonfiction authors.
Good question. And I feel like there's a few trends. We are in an era right now. Well, firstly, this year has changed everything about digital. It's migrated people more digitally than ever before, with the latest fashion trend of isolation. And so we are at a visual and audible age where brands like authors have to adapt to the visual needs of an audience and an audible need of an audience. We're seeing an emergence of podcasts, visual phone calls. We're seeing an emergence of video through micro videos as well through social engagement. We've now had a focus on understanding our personas and our audiences and our lists. So we're getting better at segmenting those lists as well, and then communicating to those lists differently because we're all different and we all have different needs. And unfortunately, marketing used to be a one size fits all, and that's not the case anymore. We're also seeing, paid media being an important vessel for distribution and getting your message out. Most social channels today have an organic reach, and then they have a paid reach. And the organic reach is a fraction of what the paid reach could do for you. And so if you're in the fence of whether you should start advertising, it's that kind of that same phase when people used to ask themselves whether they should be on social media. I think that's another form of where we're evolving. We're seeing the age of influencers and micro influencers take over moving forward as well, where we understand that you can access a wider audience if you tap into the influencers or micro influencers. And we're starting to understand the ethics of working with influencers as well, and what are the requirements on both sides. I think we've also started to build funnels and focus on conversion. We're starting to see more landing pages, and we're starting to see more customized, unique call to actions. And digital marketing, in short, has become smarter and more targeted in many ways. And so I think we've matured the concept of storytelling and digital engagement through effective metrics and proper funneling of traffic. But more importantly, we're focusing on how to get the best from the call to action as well.
And I love the fact that you say that it's far more targeted now. One of the areas that, and I know my listeners hear this all the time, is that I focus on niche markets. And so the fact that you're saying that marketing isn't a one-size-fits-all anymore is sort of like music to my heart. I'm thrilled that it's a trend as well. And I think it's one that's going to continue. And the idea of these micro influencers, which help me with that, would those be within a niche market or a niche market? Where would you find these micro influencers?
I think they're everywhere. They're in Instagram, they're on TikTok. As far as the social engagement for the current generations and the future generations, TikTok is a new platform for many people. But they're also, in our lives, they're in our digital forums, at conferences. I'm considered a digital marketing influencer for a very long time in the Vancouver communities with specifics to Victoria. I used to go, speak at Social Media Camp every year. And it used to be Canada's largest social media conference and on the West Coast. And being a speaker every year for 6 years in a row, you end up becoming or considered being an authority in certain trends. And I was known as the guy that you would go see speak that would talk about content trends or digital trends. And there's a digital aspect of influencership, but there's also a day-to-day or personal aspect, and it comes in different formats. But let's use a visual example for the sake of storytelling. So I come to Brisbane, the world becomes a bit apocalyptic, and I have to start working for my home office, and I have a digital mentoring practice. And because of the fact that I'm 6'4", sometimes posture is a commonality when it comes to back problems. So I realized, okay, I can't go see a masseuse and I can't really massage myself. So I end up going on Instagram and I end up seeing these influencers that start advertising massage guns. And until that point, I didn't understand how that worked. And then I saw this video of how someone could actually apply a massage gun to themselves. And I'm like, this is exactly what I need to help with my corrected posture issues. I go online and, I do what most people do, and that is try to see how much it costs on Amazon. And within a few minutes, I see ads on Instagram, on Facebook for that same massage gun that I just Googled. And I go to myself, okay, so I'm being retargeted, and the process of retargeting has become more custom. So the digital algorithms have understood that I'm looking for this because I have a problem. So they start sending me ads, and they start sending me these influencers that are using this with access links to go to a landing page to buy a massage gun. And then it became about cost. So I was like, how can I get the best value? And I ended up falling into the marketer's hook, which is showing how much money you're saving by buying a massage gun from a website that allowed you to save on cost. And within a few minutes, I was pulling out my credit card, and within 2 weeks, the massage gun arrived. That is where we are in marketing today. It is a journey that goes from problem, demand to solution, and then it comes down to the best solution. And that applicable journey can work for anyone. It can work for an entrepreneur. It can be someone that's looking for a course or looking for direction. It could be someone that's looking for research. And if you're an author, it's about creating a proper journey where you don't create these cul-de-sacs. If you can lead and take someone through the process of getting to your brand and understanding what your book is about, and then understanding how to get the book and deliver on cost, then you nailed the marketing journey.
It's funny, as you went through that example, I'm thinking it took me so long to realize that I was being targeted. As you rightly said, you all of a sudden you look for something and then ads for that particular item appear everywhere. You log on to a site and there's an ad for what you were looking for. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I'd never noticed that before. Duh.
Yeah, we coin it. I mean, it's called remarketing. Back in the day, I guess the common similarity in the 60s and 70s would be billboard ads. And there's an old traditional marketing context that says that you need to have 6 to 7 touch points before you can influence a decision. All we've done is we've taken that same concept and we've now created digital narratives that seem to be appearing at your user side at least about 6 or 7 times. And so this process is called remarketing and retargeting. And it's a common practice that started a few years ago. I mean, now the algorithms are even more scarier because they can determine whether you're a coffee or tea drinker. And based on that predictive analysis, they can create suggestive ads based on everything they know about your behavior, which is even more scarier.
Yeah, the big brother is watching you. I know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How can we take that concept as a solopreneur, and here we are with this book and creating a brand? How can we use that remarketing, strategy for ourselves? Is that possible?
Yeah, I'm going to say something first, probably that most people are not familiar with hearing this, but I think it also starts with publishers and authors to diversify their digital reach. Most traditional publishers will focus on a hard print book or having books in stores. And then, we had the digital route, which was, a bit of self-publishing as well. But we're now at an age where certain publishers are focusing on keywords and looking at online demand and then customizing websites and landing pages to position for those keywords. Some publishers, hybrid publishers, are now focusing on trends when it comes to the video world. I just consulted with a publishing firm that understands the keywords and then tries to match the authorship to feed those keywords through specific ads and landing pages and websites. I think it's a joint effort, and I think we're going to see an emergence of publishing. I think the publishing industry itself will evolve because the way we used to promote a book and the way we used to market a book, I think it's fair to say it has evolved drastically in the last few years. And so I think the industry itself is going to go through this digital route where authors need to also be able to tell their story online and do more online and have a presence online. And I think of this book called Atticus. The author is Atticus, and it's called Love Her Wild. And I'm a fan of dark poetry. And I was on Instagram and I noticed that these quotes started popping up, and he targeted a male, but primarily a female audience. And I first learned about the book through quotes. And I was like, oh, I'm fascinated by these quotes. There's very strong quotes. There was a quote that said, "At the end of the day, we are all wolves howling at the same moon." And I read that quote and I was completely drawn in. I said, I have to get this book. I ended up looking for who Atticus was, the author. And Atticus was an anonymous name and nobody knows the face of this author. Now I'm intrigued even more. So I'm like looking how I can find him. And I'm an 82 baby. I was born in 1982. I'm considered between a sort of a millennial zone, but not really millennial. And so I'm on Instagram and I'm on all these social platforms. And that's where I looked for the author first. Couldn't find anything about him, but I landed on his website and I landed on a place where I could buy the book. And, within a few minutes, I'm buying the book and it's being shipped to my place within 3 days. That journey of storytelling and identifying your brand and understanding the emotion you're not just creating emotion and sentiment from the book, you're also creating sentiment and emotion from the author, because that's how people connect with you. And so for Atticus, as much as his writing was powerful, I was more intrigued about the author. And that's where I found the similarity, because I'm a closet writer. I started writing digital books and business books, but the one thing I love writing about is dark poetry.
Wow. So we're seeing an inside view of Bosco Anthony. Great.
Yeah, no, I'm a creative, and I think you have to be if you're a digital strategist. My brain's always moving, and I think my biggest challenge is trying to slow it down. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe.
Yes. Beautiful.
And he
Lovely.
talks about formulas and numbers in his head and in his mind. And I'm, a person that's constantly focusing on, where do you want to go? I worked with a publishing firm a few years ago, and I said to them, where do you want to go? And it was a hard question to answer, because everyone was focusing about the problems for today. And we had to take that a step back and go, no, the problems of today will be solved by quick things and optimization, but where do you want to evolve to? And so my mind's always thinking about, where do you want to go? And then we deconstruct backwards. And I create these blueprints in everything I do, because I feel like if you know where you're going and what you're becoming, it's easier to create that journey.
Very much so. That blueprint for yourselves. And that's pretty special, because very few people I know have done that, especially when it comes to your book and what you want to do with it. Interestingly enough, when authors come to me, one of the first questions I ask, one is, who's this book for? But what do you want this book to do for you? Right. Is one of the significant questions that I ask, because everybody's got a different idea of what this book is going to do. Some think that they're going to sell millions of copies and they're going to get rich and famous. Well, I try and tell them that's a bit of a myth. I don't know too many people who have done that. But rather, if you use it and leverage it, as you had mentioned earlier, to get into speaking and training and coaching opportunities, that's where it can really serve you.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about content, because in this digital environment, content strategies, I believe, are very important. Talk to us about those and what your thinking is there. What should we be doing?
That's a very good question, and I enjoy answering this question, because I'm probably going to give you an unorthodox answer. Most people will focus on the importance of a content strategy, which is, having the purpose, building the research, curating, editorial, creative, posting, optimization, and metrics. That's sort of the 8-wheel cycle of a content strategy. And I'm going to say something very controversial. Most content strategies fail. And here's the reason why they fail. They don't focus on distribution. We have plenty of content. What we don't really have is a holistic approach to distribution, because content distribution is a commitment. It's not a campaign. It's a long-term commitment. As a strategist, I tend to focus on executing on that strategy by focusing on getting effective results. And the only way you're going to measure and see the results is by having an effective distribution process. So brands today shouldn't just focus on creating that content and making it visual and engaging, but really focus on that distribution aspect. You could have the world's greatest content, but if you don't have a proper distribution channel, your content will fail. You're probably going to ask, what is a proper content distribution strategy?
You were reading my mind.
I'll tell you this. Most distribution strategies focus on organic posts and organic channels, which is 2 spokes of this marketing wheel. What makes it effective is when you focus on the 6 other elements, which is paid advertising, exposure points, working with influencers, developing content partners and publishers, building campaigns, and more importantly, repurposing that content. These are 6 elements that many people don't focus on. And these are the areas that will take your content from good to great. Because if you're just relying on that organic algorithmic view, like, I'm hoping that people on Facebook will see my post, it's not going to work, because organically 1/10 of your audience will actually see a post. I post my creative writings on Facebook. I've started to, and I wrote a post called the Broken Leadership Playbook. And, I belong to a global think tank called the Gray Swan Guild. My perspective was published in this white paper, and it was a group of people that came together to do some sense making and really come up with the common good of writing our perspectives. And so my perspective on leadership was highlighted, and I decided to share that through LinkedIn and Facebook. I want to take a guess of how many people organically saw that post?
Tell us.
It was probably about 1/20th of my following. For me, that tells me that organically we're destined to fail. Organically and algorithmically, we're destined to fail. And that is why most brands fail, because they think that if I just post this on Facebook or LinkedIn, the world is going to be paying attention to me. It doesn't work that way. We're no longer in that narrative. We are at an evolved narrative where we have to actually invest in media partners, digital publishers, influencers, people with email lists, finding those exposure points, investing in paid reach. That's what makes that viewership and audience engagement more effective. So when people come to me and they ask me to help build these strategies for them, I really go back to that concept of where do you want to go and what do you want to do with this? And if the answer is I want to have a global audience, well, then content distribution is part of that strategy.
I want you to say those 6 areas again, because you sort of said them so quickly. I was like, oh my goodness,
Right.
What happened?
Well, let's start with the ones that people do really well. And that is, there's 8 of these strategies, but let's start with the first 2, which is organic posts and organic channels. This is access to your social media and organically posting content. So these are the first 2 that people do really well. Unfortunately, those 2 don't do enough. So let's talk about the 6. Item number 1, paid media. And paid media could be having an advertising strategy. Item number 2 is finding exposure points. And exposure points could be people with lists, affiliates, could be blogs, guest blogs, podcasters. The third element is the influence brand. And that is working with people that have a wider audience or a bigger audience or your audience that you don't have access to. The fourth element is partners. And partners could be digital publishers. These could be people that are connected within your network or people that are your competitors. And this is a great strategy for you to turn your competitors into your allies. The fifth element is building campaigns and ensuring that traffic is going through your inbound channels. And you could create a live chat button on your landing page so you can talk to people in real time. You could build your own email campaigns and have a drip methodology where you have multiple touch points. And then there's the repurposing, which is the final step. And that is taking text content and turning it into audio pieces, taking audio pieces and turning them into video pieces, creating that holistic approach. And you might ask, why is Audible such a big thing? Well, think about it. We're now at an age where we have Audible devices in our houses. Google Home is one of them. Alexa is another one. Google is now creating Audible keywords, and it's tracking what people are asking these home devices and then creating content to fit that. So if you said, Google, play me a podcast on leadership, now all of a sudden Google is optimizing those keywords and will start to look for authors and people that are authorities in those areas of need and demand. And that's the age we're moving into. And what's even scarier is we're also moving into the age of artificial intelligence. And so that on its own will start to change all these trends and probably make my talk very irrelevant in a couple of months.
Yeah, and that's scary too, is
Right.
that whole idea of 1 minute you're relevant and the next minute you're not. Let's talk about mistakes. Our listeners love learning about mistakes, Bosco. How about
Absolutely.
mistakes for the entrepreneur?
I've done probably close to 1,000 digital projects, if I have to count. And I've done this in over 90 different marketing verticals. So there's a lot of mistakes and there's a lot of challenges. And I can tell you the ones that creep up are the common ones are through different projects is this. Most people don't have a vision. Most people think that profits is the vision. Most people don't plan, they rush to building campaigns. Most people don't have a proper budget because they've never allocated. But if you're a business owner, how many business owners actually go on their budgets and go, we're going to put some budget for content distribution? Very few. I think I've had maybe one or two that actually anticipated that. Lack of resources. And when I talk about resources, I'm talking about people, automation, tools, and just the capacity. Because as business owners, we're so focused on the day-to-day operations that you're never on the business when you first start out. Most people don't have those resources, which is why they look for someone like myself to come in and help them. Most people don't have proper timing. They want to rush a campaign for tomorrow's launch. And most of the time, we do things by default, not by design. If you're a strategist, you tend to create a rhythm based on cadence and planning. And that takes, 2 to 3 months, everything from concept to innovation to building and then to actual messaging. And so timing is a very big access point. Most people don't provide support to the audience. I'm sure you can relate here. Most authors are thinking about what they want to do with the book. They're not thinking about the reader. And that's the access of support that we talk about, having a live chat button, having FAQs, having people the ability to contact someone and having a response. You reached out to me online and I got your message 4 days before I responded, and I was going through a campaign. And I had two choices. I could have got my virtual assistant to reach out to you right away. And I said, no, I think I'm going to reach out personally because this is a media request and it's always good to build that personalization. And so having that support and that journey is so important. And then focusing on the reach. And, do you have the organic channel to build engagement? And most people don't. So then you need to build that distribution strategy that I talked about. I can't tell you that there's one reason why people fail. I see many reasons why people make mistakes and fail. But more importantly, it's not because it's intentional. Most of the time, people don't even know that they're making mistakes because they don't have access to these insights. Most people's concept of digital is let's just build a website and the world will come to us. And it's the same reason why when I did my TEDx talk, some of the speakers in my cohort just stopped for 3 weeks and said, I'm going to take a break. And I did the opposite. You have this common misconception that if you build something digitally, everything will come to you. And that doesn't happen.
I think you hit the nail on the head. You don't know what you don't know. Yes, when you talk about these mistakes, it's like, wow, yes. I mean, I know that I'm committing many of them myself, but I obviously, because I'm exposed to many different authors, I see that as well. You're so right. I know that our listeners are absolutely chomping at the bit, Bosco, to find out how they can find out more about you, contact you. Take it away. Tell us more.
Absolutely. So I have made it easy for anyone who's looking to find me. My brand is found digitally and socially. So you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, all at Bosco Anthony. And my website is boscoanthony.com. And my email is bosco@boscoanthony.com. It's very, very easy to tap into reaching out. I'd encourage people to go back to this notion of what is it that you're looking for? I'm a digital strategist by trade. I speak digitally now and internationally as well. And I'm a storyteller and a content engineer and architect. And accidentally, as I did my TEDx talk, I landed on a mentoring practice, which was completely unanticipated for. I talked about how to fuel life by living with purpose and alignment. And all of a sudden, people started asking me to help them mentor them to build that alignment. And all of a sudden, I started having a mentoring practice that focused on life alignment and digital storytelling and engagement. It's important for people to ask themselves, what is it that they're looking for and where would they like to go? Because I think that's usually the first question I ask people is, where do you want to go? And it usually throws them off. I usually like to give homework and always ask, what is it that you're looking to achieve and where would you like to go? So it helps me understand how I can help.
Well, I can certainly understand people wanting you to mentor them, because it's like just listening to you and your brilliance, your wisdom, and all the different things that you're involved with. Wow. Yes, it's very exciting. Thank you. And I just have to get that one more ounce of wisdom out of you. If you were to leave our listeners with a golden nugget, what would that be, Bosco?
I was thinking about this actually today, and I was like, what can I give that's of value? And I'm going to give the most humble piece of advice that was given to me many years ago by one of my mentors. And it comes and is derived from a Spartan warrior creed. And so if you are a historian and enjoy history as much as I do, there's this, the Spartans were known to be some amazing warriors that really live by a creed. And I learned about it in a book called The 5 a.m. Club, written by Robin Sharma. And the saying says, "He who sweats more in training bleeds less in war." I would change that and say he or she, or any other brand that you wear, sweats more in training, bleeds less in war. And I didn't get to this stage in life because I woke up and said, I'm this gifted strategist. I came and landed here today based on hard work, a lot of practice, a lot of training, and being fortunate to work with some amazing brands and learning the process through practice. Just like anything else, you don't become a good writer until you practice to write. You don't become, a great publishing company until you take on different publishing challenges. I'm not someone that was gifted. I had an accidental career that took me on an amazing journey. And I think that's where I've spent a lot of my time. So if I can leave the audience with anything today, is when you sweat more in training, you bleed less in war.
Love that. Thank you. Listeners, wow, you have just been treated to an absolute gold mine of information. I'm sure you're going to listen to this interview several times to take everything in that Bosco has said. Bosco, thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it, taking the time to do this. And thank you all for taking time out of your precious day to listen to this interview. And I sincerely hope that it sparked some ideas you can use to sell more books. Here's wishing you much book marketing success.
The time is now to take action and finally build your book-selling empire. And the great news is that Susan is here to help you. Visit bookmarketingmentors.com and sign up for a free 15-minute book marketing strategy session with Susan. She'll help you discover your first steps to marketing and selling your book. Only those who take action are rewarded, so visit bookmarketingmentors.com, and we'll see you again next week.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.